you've got an incredible career to date, not just in sports administration, but on the sporting field as well. And we can touch a little bit on that because you've got both sides to sport, which is a great perspective. I'm really interested. You've been almost 1 year in your role with Skate Australia as the CEO. How are you finding that role, and what responsibilities do you feel most acutely as you come up to 1 year?
Ooh, that's a good question. And it's slightly terrifying as well that it's almost 1 year. I kind of don't know where the time has gone. It's moved very, very quickly. And but yeah, started in May, very late May of 2025. And so I feel like I've sort of firmly got my feet under the desk now, but still on an exponential learning curve. But it's been really exciting, and it's really probably have a really vast array of sports that I'm responsible for as the CEO of Skate Australia, which can be quite different from other sporting organisations that have kind of got one single discipline that they get to focus on. And so I feel a lot of responsibility for ensuring that every single discipline underneath our Skate Australia banner feels equally supported and equally heard or recognised within our framework as well. That can be really challenging when you have up to 11 different disciplines to do that for, but ultimately that's probably the biggest sort of responsibility as I see it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's a massive, massive task. Yeah, as you're saying there, 11 different disciplines. So for those that are unfamiliar with the operations of Skate Australia and the different sports that you're responsible for, could you just walk us through what those 11 sports are, the 11 disciplines?
Yeah, so there's a few in that sort of like 11 catch-all that we don't have sort of really in-depth structures for in the country at the moment, but we would be responsible for ensuring that there might be some representatives that could attend things like the upcoming World Skate Games in 2026, and so some of those smaller sort of disciplines are things like downhill skateboarding. And so if people are familiar with what's happening at the moment around the Winter Olympics with like luge or bobsled, etc., it's sort of we have street luge skateboarding, which sort of looks a bit similar but on a skateboard on the road, and then there's also kind of stand-up racing, the skateboard down a hill as well. So those are some smaller disciplines that we have some responsibility over, as well as sort of like esports are coming for some of the roller and skate disciplines as well. But ultimately the sports that we have the most carriage over on a day-to-day basis are inline hockey, rink hockey, artistic skating, speed skating, skateboarding. I always get worried that I'm going to forget one when I'm under this pressure. Roller derby. It's like forgetting a child. Inline freestyle, roller freestyle, scootering, and then I don't think I've said it, was skateboarding, which is our Olympic discipline. So you can see across all of those different disciplines, very kind of all different types of cultures, all different types of sports between team and individual. So it creates a kind of very vibrant and dynamic and diverse kind of fabric that I'm responsible for leading.
Yeah, it's incredibly vast. And as you're saying, they're not all mainstream sports that you would consider. Downhill skateboarding as an example there. Of course, skateboarding as a sport has risen to huge growth in the past few years after being included in the Olympic Games. How do you find balancing the height of that sport, which is massive, and then also supporting those smaller ones underneath it? How do you find supporting that balance?
Oh, I don't know whether I've nailed it yet. I'm sure that some of our members and people in our community would probably say that we haven't, which is okay. That's the challenge of each day, of trying to make sure that we do 1% better every single day for our members, and that they see that we are trying to really actively have that balance. It is a unique environment to have that many different disciplines and only one of them be an Olympic sport, and what comes with that is obviously a huge increase of sort of market voice and eyes on the sport, expectation, and as well as the sort of financial support that you receive very gratefully. And we're always incredibly grateful to the Australian Institute of Sport and the Australian Sports Commission for their support and what we receive to be able to deliver a world-class team on the Olympic stage every 4 years. But that it does naturally create an uneven balance that is really challenging to solve on a day-to-day basis. So I don't think that we've nailed it yet, but I think some of the things that we're obviously really trying to do is just ensure that whilst there's a big beast there in relation to our skateboarding program, and we're very proud of it, absolutely, that we've got some resources and we've got some focus on ensuring where there's gaps for our other disciplines that stop people from being involved, that we're really trying to focus on filling those gaps. And I think we're making small incremental change, but it's probably not too visible just yet.
And it wouldn't be easy at all to manage all that. 11 different streams, and you've got the big gigantic one that is skateboarding on its own. Right? And it's only limited operations, correct? Outside of yourself, you've only got a few helping hands with you, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty small, lean organisation. So, again, probably the sort of the imbalance is the majority of our staff exist in the skateboarding program. Again, that's fairly normal and typical for a high performance program in a national sporting organisation. But we do only have kind of 1 or 2 pairs of hands at national level to oversee the other kind of 10 disciplines. And that's just down to sort of sheer numbers. And but we're hoping over the course of the next sort of 5 to 6 years that we can really start to increase that and really promote all the different ways that you can get involved in skate sports and provide some extra resourcing to allow us to thrive and grow.
We'll come back to skateboarding in just a moment, but I'm curious to wind back the clock a little bit on your career to date, because you've had a number of different experiences. We touched on a little bit at the start of the show there. Before Skate Australia, you were with Triathlon Australia, and then before that, Cycling Australia. We'll touch on your franchising in just a moment. But as you've moved between those organisations in particular and then now into Skate Australia, has there been any patterns that you've noticed between each of them that have overlapped at all?
I think the patterns are that everybody thinks that their sport is unique and we're all facing the same challenges. So Cycling Australia is who I started with in sport, which then very quickly became AusCycling, and probably quite similar to Skate Australia, multidiscipline organisation, so multiple sports under the one banner, and again, similar complexities to what I face at Skate Australia today. So probably had some good training and good grounding going through that to sort of take on the challenge that I have today. But again, like each sport underneath AusCycling or within triathlon and now again in skate is that every single sport sees their challenges as being entirely unique to their sport and their experience. And yes, there's nuances around everybody's experience and certain things that, skating rinks closing down around the country is quite specific to skate sports, but that doesn't change to basketball, where they can't get enough court space or court time to allow themselves to grow. So again, whilst the nuance is different, it's still the same challenge. Infrastructure and facilities are a major challenge for all sports in Australia at this current point in time. Not enough membership, not enough funding, not enough support, not enough resource. All of those things are all things that we battle with every single day in sporting organisations, from kind of grassroots all the way through to high performance. And so that's probably been the big pattern that, when I first started in sport, I heard about all the different sort of unique challenges and thought, oh, this is really unique to cycling, and then kind of moved into triathlon and started seeing some similarities and some patterns, and now moved into skate and sort of seeing it all play out again. And I think that sort of shift in mindset for sport around, we're all facing common challenges just with our own little nuances is a really important one over the course of the next few years, because, there is something coming on the horizon where we're all going to be kind of battling for space and time and market voice, and we have to work together to be able to kind of resolve that for the betterment of Australian society, as opposed for just one singular discipline or one singular sport.
It's so interesting. Quite funny in a way, I suppose. Everyone's got their blinders on, don't they? And it's just, that's their sport and nothing else. But as you say, the membership issues, the funding issues, they're all the same across the board, and they're just relative to that individual sport.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll touch on franchising in a second, but in my franchising days, we used to call it studio blindness, that, you'd walk into your own little business and just have the blinkers on and just see kind of what was in front of you, or only see your challenges, and some of those studio blindness issues would relate to how you present. And so you're telling everybody that you don't have enough members, but ultimately you've got a pile of trash in the background that's really unappealing to somebody coming in, but you've got the blinders on to not be able to see what somebody else is seeing when they come in, and you're just sort of really seeing the sort of global issues. And I think that's the same with sport, that we can put our blinders on and we can get really focused on all the negatives of not enough space, not enough time, not enough money, not enough resource, but we're actually not looking inward and really thinking about, well, what makes me attractive to somebody that wants to get involved? What could I do better? And what could our sport do better to attract new people? And if we just get good at delivering, and back in my franchising days, if you just got good at kind of being a good business owner or developing your staff, etc., then you'd reap the rewards of that without really sitting in that sort of negativity of all the things that you could be having. So I think it's the same, when you really tunnel vision on these are all the problems, it's hard to kind of lift up and see the things that we could do better to be able to grow.
And do you think there's opportunity for all sports to come together in some manner to support each other? If we look at it from a business context, each individual sport is its own business and they're a competitor to each other, in terms of they're all chasing for little Johnny to come and play for them and play their sports. Do you see there being opportunities there for collaboration, or is it very much, yes, we all have the same concerns, but as you say there, develop the capabilities internally with your people and what forth to boost participation in your sports?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. So I do think that there's opportunities for us to work together, and I think there's sort of early signs of that starting to happen more often and better. I think the Australian Sports Commission has been fantastic with the development of the Play Well strategic plan to really sort of talk about lifelong involvement being a big kind of key focus of sport in Australia. Is that your sport journey doesn't look linear. It drops in and drops out and drops codes. It changes codes or changes disciplines. And again, if we're all providing good experience and quality experience for the participant, we all benefit. That somebody has a great experience at AusCyc and may not find their favourite sport in the AFL, but then thinks, actually, the skills that I acquired over there are actually quite good for this sport over there, and I had a great experience, so I'm going to go there and kind of be able to move around. And I think triathlon was a really big beneficiary of other sports providing people with good experiences, which then led to then being engaged in triathlon, obviously being 3 different disciplines between swimming, cycling and running. You might be running and engaging in, from an adult perspective in a marathon or something, and then you think about what's the next challenge. You might go to triathlon. You're only going to do that if you have a really good experience within that marathon or within the sort of participation that you've experienced before. So we all have a role to play around how we engage with people, how we don't make it so complex that people can't get involved, or make it so hard to understand how to find where to even sign up, to ensure that we're engaging to more people more often, and then be able to know that they're not always going to be with me. They might go over there and have a great experience over there, but I've contributed to their experience, and that's good for the whole country. And that, you know, the more people engaging in sport, the more that we all kind of win together. So yes, we are sort of businesses, and we've got profit and loss sheets, and we've got expectations and KPIs and all of that sort of stuff. But I think, you know, I do think, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, and that we're all on the same sea together, and us fighting each other is just kind of not conducive. So, I think we're on the right path to seeing some of that change. And again, like, I think that's only been relatively new, but hopefully we'll start to really see some programs and some partnerships happen across sports over the course of the next few years.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The rising tide helps everyone. Yeah, you're seeing a lot more programs coming through from different sports, different initiatives to engage young children into sport, which is fantastic to see. And it's, as you say, it's only beneficial for the country of Australia if there's more kids out there participating in sport, and then as they develop and as they age, continuing their sport, because that's, of course, another big concern in Australia is you get that drop off around 12, 13, and then particularly 17, 18, where kids just stop playing sport, they move into other areas of their lives, and you lose that progression through to adulthood, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's an area that we all hold a responsibility for, is that looking at having different modalities and ways to engage in your sport that, you know, as a 14-year-old female, maybe wearing the lycra and having to run in front of all your friends is not the way to kind of engage with athletics, if I use that as an example. But having a different modality for that age group, and being able to kind of keep them moving, keep them active, and understand kind of the reasons why they're sort of gravitating away from it. And you know, I use that as an example. That's not necessarily where there's a lot of drop off, but it's you know, how are we all kind of seeing where these patterns are and adapting to that? I don't think we're particularly good as a sector and that at the moment, but I think we're all kind of aligned on the fact that we want to be, and we want to be able to understand it better and change the way that we do things, or change the competition structures without losing the beauty of what each sport is all about, and being able to kind of capture the stars and the 1%ers of that sport to be able to put them into the Olympic teams, etc. But you know, I think that's kind of some of the responsibility over the next sort of 10 years for Australian sport is to think how do we deliver it differently, and have more options throughout that period, particularly in those teen years where life gets different and challenging, and let them know that there's a safety net to come back when, you know, they may drop out for a little while, and that's okay, but come back to sport because it's a good place to be, and it provides you all of these benefits. So there's a bit of work to do, but I think definitely feel like we're all on the same page that that's a place where we want to be.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of that is strategy based around what strategies can be implemented to promote those activities. And a lot of that is to do with more of a business mindset. And you've got one of those, which is fantastic from your franchising days. And you touched on a little bit there around building out your team and improving their capabilities. I'm curious to learn, what are some of those key learnings that you took from your franchising days that you've been able to bring into sport over the years?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things that I've sort of seen as parallels that, you know, firstly, if I kind of go back to the first two sports that I worked in with the sort of creation of AusCycling, and then when I joined triathlon, it had just also kind of moved into what's now known as AusTriathlon, and both of those organisations operating slightly differently, but within what we would sort of look at as a unitary or a one management kind of model, where there's sort of the NSOs sort of got carriage of the state state-based organisations as opposed to being separate organisations in a federated structure. And, you know, I did see a lot of kind of, while those organisations were kind of trying to find their feet and stand up, and is effectively that it's a franchising relationship to some degree. And that can be a bit of an unpopular opinion because it is very different, but that the NSO is effectively the franchise or the master franchisee, and providing materials and providing structure and providing output in a aligned manner to the state sporting organisations or their state offices, depending on kind of how it's structured. And I think like that kind of shift of that, you know, it's not about control, it's about being able to provide a system, a structure, a template to allow scaled success, is something that sport hasn't quite grasped yet, but is a huge opportunity. And it's something that, you know, I see as being one of the benefits of being part of a franchise. It was the reason that we decided to buy into a franchise rather than just because we were in fitness, rather than me and my husband just opening a gym on the street corner. We saw the benefit to opening a proven franchise methodology that has template structures, system support, all of those types of things to allow you to take it, put your individual stamp on it for wherever you were in the local area, and then thrive. And again, I think it never felt like it was a control situation from the franchisor. It was, here's how you go out and you deliver to be able to be successful. So that kind of mindset around the NSO enabling success at state level, and then the state organisations enabling success at club level, is, I think, a really different way to approach how we deliver sport. And we're obviously not there yet, but I could kind of see it in play and see how it could be really great if through these two experiences at cycling and AusTriathlon as well. So that's sort of been a big lesson for me, is like really thinking about setting up your NSO to be an enabler of success, not an inhibitor or a controller of the sport. And I think that's kind of probably brought a bit of a fresh lens or a bit of a different perspective into leading an NSO where I am today.
That's a great perspective. Almost like, here's the blueprints and out you go and just follow that and you'll achieve success.
Yeah, and I think that the pushback that you get a lot in that space of like, so NSO provides a, let's just call it a beginner program. Well, people feel really connected to their beginner program. They feel like they have the best program. They've got the best way to get people to engage, etc. And so then there's like this pushback that comes when the NSO tries to create a template. But it's really about, you know, it's not about losing individuality. It's about creating an opportunity to scale and deliver at scale. And, you know, if every single person is creating their own thing and reinventing the wheel every time, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and we can probably only deliver to this many people. Whereas if we've got a template that, you know, we can grab, we don't have to use the brain space to think about how does this go together or how do I do the bookings because the template is all done, then you go out and you deliver and you put your personal stamp, what makes you magic and why you're so good at delivering that program is not necessarily about the exercise or about the like training plan. It's about you as the individual. And so our role as an NSO and then down and into an SSO is to try and kind of get people to understand that. I think that it's not about trying to control. It's not about trying to remove individuality. It's about trying to enhance it and really allow people to shine with the things that they're really good at, which again was what franchising was all about in my experience, was put your own stamp on it, bring your individuality, but you don't have to sit here and think about how you're going to, you know, even from a marketing perspective, we had blueprints for marketing of like put your local area marketing kind of lens on it, but here's the stamp. You don't need to come up with all the catchphrases and do all the graphics and stuff like that, which would have taken so much time as a small business owner. So we were able to be quicker, more nimble, and get success quicker. So I think that's sort of trying to, people think that they're losing in this scenario with sport when you start to try and create more templates, and it's more about like, no, you can win more. We can engage more people if we're not spending the time doing the things that we're not good at.
Yeah. So take us back to the early franchise days. What was it that propelled you to look into fitness or into gyms specifically? What was the draw card? What was going on in your life at that point in time?
So sport is my third career, because I started out in performing arts. I don't think that's on my LinkedIn anywhere. But I went to drama school in London and had been in sort of the arts in Australia for a long time, went to drama school in London, came back, and I don't know whether they still call it this, but back in the day they used to call it the Heathrow injection, that when you'd come back from London and as an Australian, you sort of were carrying a bit of the extra weight, and from probably being in my late teens, early 20s, and having a very good time in London. And I still obviously danced and I was active, and but yeah, I came back to Australia and kind of just quickly realised that I'd put on a little bit of weight, and stood in audition rooms as a dancer, and was a bit bigger than the other girls in the room, and had a kind of bit of a turning point moment where, when I was getting prepared for an audition, a sort of mentor of mine asked me if I was going for a lead role that was a heavily overweight character, and I didn't see myself in that role. I saw myself as the sort of, the best friend character next to her that was the popular girl at school or something like that. And so I kind of had this like little light bulb moment of like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not where I think I need to be for the roles that I'm trying to achieve. So I went and found a personal trainer and started doing personal training, and lost a bit of weight. Like I wasn't overweight at all, and like that's not a problem even if I was, but it's but I lost a little bit of weight and felt a bit better about myself in the audition rooms, and then just sort of started picking up running, and kind of one thing led to another, and the personal training studio owner asked me if I'd be interested in getting my qualifications and doing a personal training qualification to work in his studio. And I thought, oh, that works pretty well around performing arts. That is, like, I can go to auditions during the day, I can PT in the morning and PT at the night. Perfect. Like that's great. So took that job and started that, and then really quickly realised how much I loved personal training, and I didn't want to go to the auditions anymore. And so kind of I just really naturally kind of dropped out of performing arts focus and changed my focus to being in personal training, and that becoming my career. And I met my husband in the same studio that I started working in, and that was a franchise of the franchise organisation that we ultimately bought into. So neither of us had been to university. I went to drama school, but that didn't really count. And this seemed like the way to get ahead was to buy into a franchise business, and something that we really understood and we really believed in. So we did so, packed our bags a couple of weeks after we got married, and moved to Melbourne from Sydney, and stayed there for 8 years.
Amazing. What a story. From London, the Heathrow injection, as you were saying, and then come across complete transformation of careers, and then pack your bags and put it all into Melbourne.
Yeah. I don't know whether Heathrow injection is particularly politically correct these days, but that's definitely what we called it back. This is like we're almost talking 20 years ago now. So, but yeah, it's like it's funny to think back and think of where I am now, and like, definitely would never have pictured this when I was packing my bags to go to London in the first place. But I think it all kind of leads to where you're supposed to be.
It would have taken a lot of courage as well to pack everything, head down to Melbourne. You've got the blueprint, as we were talking about with the franchise, but it's still a business. It's still something fresh and you need to come in and still make it work at the end of the day.
We were only really young, so it was really scary, and we were taking a really big gamble on our own ability, and we hadn't really kind of been in the profession for that long in the scheme of things. But I think having a little bit of guts and courage goes a long way sometimes, particularly in small business ownership.
And you got some pretty big recognition out of your franchising time. So if you just speak to us a little bit around some of those awards that you picked up over the years.
Oh, that's embarrassing. Yes. I think particularly through one of our franchises in Melbourne, we were really fortunate to have some great clients that were top of their game in all kinds of fields, but like incredibly successful individuals that, as a result of training them, I was kind of almost getting a free education while I talked to them. And, I'd see them a couple of times a week and spend one-on-one time and hear about their week and ask them questions and be really curious about kind of what made them tick. And so I just saw it as such a big opportunity to learn from people that had been incredibly successful for a number of years. But as a result of that as well, I then ended up being kind of like backed by them as an individual as well. And I think that one of the awards that I was lucky enough to sort of be part of was the Telstra Young Businesswoman of the Year Award in Victoria. And, I was nominated for that by one of my clients that was an incredibly successful, inspirational businesswoman of her own. And, I never took that for granted that, I got to spend all this time with her and understand kind of what made her tick and her leadership style and the things that she did in her business day in, day out. And then she sort of recognised something in me and really wanted to recognise that through that Telstra Business Awards process. So that was obviously a real highlight and something as a young person that I felt really grateful for, and met some really cool people through that process too. Like, again, you kind of then build part of an alumni network, and lots of those women are doing really different things. Like, we're sort of 10 years on from that now, and I've watched the journeys and the careers of a lot of those women, and it's sort of, some have stayed in their professions and some have gone on to do other things like I have as well. And so that's really cool. And then we were also fortunate that our business was Studio of the Year from our franchise network, and we had a few of our trainers become Personal Trainer of the Year through the franchise network a few times as well. So we were well recognised within the franchise system for being able to probably do what I was talking about earlier, which is sort of take the franchise system and make a success of it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, and particularly your trainers becoming the trainer of the year, a lot of that is kudos to yourself and your husband in your leadership, in being able to get the best out of them so they can excel on their own accord as well. And I think that's great that you've got the business perspective there that you can bring into your current role in sport. You've got that sports administrative experience from over the years as well. The other side that you've got that we haven't quite touched on just yet is from an athlete perspective, because you've competed in numerous different triathlon events, haven't you?
Yeah, triathlon and marathons, which kind of speaks back to how I kind of got into it all in the first place, which was sort of starting to run as a sort of person that was trying to kind of lose a bit of weight to get a bit fit. I definitely caught the running bug. That was before it was cool as well. So it definitely was not
the original.
Yeah, exactly. I won't claim that I was the OG, but it definitely was before the TikTok running boom. But yes, the sort of marathons and running a lot of marathons around the world. So I've been lucky enough to be able to do the 6 Abbott World major marathons and get my 6-star medal with my husband. Both of us have done it. And we're booked in for Sydney in August to get our 7th star. So that's exciting, and that's been a real privilege to be able to experience that around the world. And then, the running led to triathlon when I decided that running marathons wasn't enough and I needed to challenge myself a bit more, I got into triathlon, and I've been sort of in and around triathlon now for 11 years, and I'm not competing at the moment, but I still call myself a triathlete, because I still love swim, bike, and run as a training platform, and always want to be able to kind of compete when I've got the time or the availability, considering that sport delivers sport on the weekends. So it becomes quite challenging for being a sports administrator and trying to compete in triathlons at the same time. But yeah, I've been lucky enough to go to Kona for the Hawaiian Ironman, and Nice World Championships in France, and New Zealand World Championships for the 70.3 half Ironman distance. None of which were my best performances by any stretch of the imagination, but I had a great time. I've seen some pretty cool places in the world thanks to sport.
Yeah, no doubt. And what would you say from being an athlete perspective, what are some of those things that you saw as an athlete, and particularly in triathlon, because that's where you moved into in terms of administrative perspective? But what kind of eye-opening things did you see as an athlete that you brought into your sports administration roles?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think obviously there's a lot of correlation when you're doing the sport of triathlon and then you start working in it to be able to sort of see as a participant things that we could be doing better. But I think just as a sort of participant of sport, and I was talking about it earlier, I think I was not an elite athlete. I paid my way to get to world championships and have those experiences. And yes, I had to work hard to be given the opportunity, but by no means am I a elite athlete. And the only reason that I stuck at it really throughout the whole thing was that I was constantly having great experiences. Yes, the challenge and the sort of reason to kind of get up in the morning and go and run in the rain or any of those sorts of things are obviously all kind of part of it. But ultimately, when you get to the event, which is sort of where the sport gets to showcase itself, is if that event falls flat, if it's not a great experience, if it's challenging, there's annoying parts to it, you're treated badly, any of those types of things, it can really turn you off. And, you look at kind of the amount of people talking about the TikTok running boom, the amount of people that are engaging in endurance sports at the moment, if they weren't having a great experience when they got to the races, a drop-off rate would be massive. And the drop-off rate might be massive in the future just because life gets in the way and the boom kind of dies off a little bit. I hope not. I hope that it continues. But it's, it definitely wouldn't be seeing the surge that it's having if our major event delivery sort of organisers like Ironman and like Events Management Queensland that puts on the Gold Coast Marathon weren't doing a fantastic job of delivering quality experiences to the participants. And I think that's the thing that sometimes, doesn't really get put at the forefront of the sort of day-to-day BAU of sport. We kind of forget it. We're trying to get through all the compliance, or we're trying to get through all the structures and the ticking the boxes. And sometimes I think we can forget how important it is for that end user to have a great experience from start to end. And so that was always at front of my mind for different things that we were doing in cycling and different things that we were doing in triathlon was, how do you reduce the friction? How do you make it easier to get involved? How do you make it more exciting? What are the things that are going to get people to come back? What are the things that are going to get people to refer a friend? What are all of those things that we need to do? And if we do all of those things well, the sport itself and the sort of activity that you're doing, people are already doing that. So we don't need to really focus on, how do you run faster? You need to make sure that you're giving people an opportunity to run faster if that's what they're trying to do and that's the experience they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. It's the product of the sport at the end of the day, isn't it? Those events is the product, and you need to have a focus on the product in your business all the time, and you always need to be constantly raising that bar and improving it on an ongoing basis. It's no different for a world championships, a state championships, a national championships of a sport, or even just the regular events that you would hold throughout a regular season. Each of those is a touch point with the end user, the participant, and they need to be improved as they go along.
Correct. We, again, kind of going back to our business days, we used to have one of the things that used to be really unique about the franchise network as a whole was that it had a really big emphasis on making sure that every trainer knew every client's name, and you walked in the front door and you said hello by name. If you could, you went and gave them a high five if you weren't in the middle of the session, or but it created a really personalised atmosphere, and it was a part of the like wow factor of the business. It sounds so simple, and I think that there's, compared to, we're talking sort of 13 years ago when we started, I think more organisations do that now, and they're better at it now than what it was around in the early 2010s. But it's, you know, something so simple creates such a like personalised quality of experience that kept people coming back. And I think it's the same at like club level. Like if you've got a new person coming into your club, or, you know, you've somebody's taken out a trial membership, like what does that initial contact look like? Do you know their name? Have you made sure that you've put someone kind of there to make them feel welcome? Do you give them a high five at the end and tell them great job? Like all of those things that can kind of, like when we're really strapped, and again, you know, it's all our volunteers that are delivering at the very coal face of this, and sort of they're generally strung out and got 30 different hats that they're wearing. So thinking about going over and welcoming this new person might be the last thing on their mind. But it's generally taken that person a lot of kind of energy and effort, whether it's a kid or an adult, to decide to join that club or attend that session. And if we don't kind of create those environments or opportunities, then, you know, we could see that they have that terrible experience and they never want to go back. And that might not be just your sport, it might be all of our sports. And then that kind of scales all the way up, that if you then, some of the beauty of like Ironmans and Gold Coast marathons and stuff like that is that all the volunteers are happy, and an Ironman, if it's your first Ironman, the volunteers, as you pick up your race packet, ring a bell that signals to everybody that you're a first timer, and everybody cheers, and like all those things that give you the warm and fuzzies. And, you know, they're so meaningful, and just, they don't cost anything. But I would tell people about that Ironman experience every day of the week, and sort of to help sell in to somebody that they should experience that too. And that's marketing right there, right? Like that's the best kind of marketing you can have, is somebody talk about your brand or talk about your sport or talk about your organisation in such a strong, emotive way. And I just think that those are the like small 1%ers that don't cost anything that we could do better to ensure that people have better experiences.
I love that. I hadn't heard about that before, around the ringing of the bell at Ironmans. That's great. What a fantastic
awesome
initiative.
Yeah, it's good, and stops the whole marquee stops, and like it's beautiful. So, it's a great touch that doesn't, like I said, doesn't cost anything.
Moving back towards skate at the moment, one of the difficulties that we spoke about earlier on is lack of time, lack of funding, lack of manpower. There's so many different things that the sporting organisations require, but unfortunately just the way the things are at the moment aren't currently available. And with skate having 11 different disciplines, how do you find being able to market each of those? Because there's always two sides to it when it comes to sports, right? You are trying to maintain the current participation that you have with the current members that you have, but you're also wanting to attract new participants as well at the same time. But you're trying to do that not just for a singular sport, but you're trying to do it for 11 different streams of the core sport of skate. So how do you find that? Because that must be very, very difficult.
Yeah, and like I alluded to before, I don't think I've even, in my sort of 6-7 months of being on deck, really cracked that yet. I think we've got a few projects that sort of should see the light of day in the next couple of months that will help us to showcase more sports across sort of different platforms and make it a little bit more even. But I do think, like, with so much sort of wide remit, you have to get pretty disciplined and focused. And I think that's probably, I'm lucky that I've got a board that really kind of back having a really laser-like focus around what we're going after and what we're prioritising at a certain point in time, and not asking me to be everything to everyone every day of the week. And so, we've got a really strong plan for the next few years of really focusing on laying some great foundations for this organisation to be able to grow over the course of the next 5 years. And, that means that maybe over the next 6 months, there might only be kind of 1 or 2 disciplines that are really getting an intense, deep focus and to set them up better than where they are now. And then we can kind of let them sort of flourish while we then start to focus on the next ones. But I think probably my experience in some other sort of organisations has obviously been that, I just can't be everything to everyone all the time. And I'm doing people a disservice if I pretend that I can. So being really clear with what the plans are, and that it's not no, it might be not yet. I can't design a sporting schools program or a kids program for 11 different disciplines all at the same time. Like, we don't have one at the moment. So what if we just focused on a learn to skate program that just gets people on quad skates or inline skates and gets them to teach the balance and the focus and the coordination required to do that? What if we just did that instead of having to do a kind of schools program for inline hockey and for roller derby and for artistic skating and for speed skating? Like, that's just a not yet. So I think that's kind of, for me, is about, like I said, about being really focused and about being disciplined, but and being upfront with that, it's not yet. Understand that doesn't always work for some people, but otherwise we're just not going to move forward at all.
Alex, what do you reckon brand means in the context of a national sporting body?
Well, it's on everything. So it's we're not afraid of putting our logos, like mine is on my shirt right now. But I think like that's from a logo perspective, which is what we all think about when we think about we're going to do a new brand or is all about the logo. But I think a lot of it is about the sort of the culture and the ethos that your sport is your brand, that, talking about that kind of quality of experience of, you can have the best flashy website and the best flashy brand that everybody wants to wear in relation to the sort of the style, etc. But if then when they kind of come inside the 4 walls of your sport, it's not a fun place to be, it's not welcoming, it's not exciting, it doesn't meet their needs, then your kind of brand doesn't matter anymore. So I think for sport, we probably, again, kind of, if we keep kind of going back to focus on experience and focus on the sort of the way people engage with your sport, that is all brand building. And nobody will really care if your logo's a bit ugly if you're doing a really good job at delivering the sport, because they're not connected to your logo, they're connected to the actual way it made them feel. And I talked about Ironman before, and the things that they do which make you feel something, and obviously there's a big part around the challenge and the things that you've got to overcome to be able to become an Ironman. But their brand is tattooed on people's bodies all around the world. Like, you have to transcend to a whole nother level if somebody wants to put a commercial organisation logo permanently on your body. And and it's not about the fact that people really love the M dot and love having a red M dot on their body. It's about what it stands for. It's about how it made them feel, all of those things. And I think, you know, at the moment, like, I would use it as a bit of a sort of litmus test of like, would anybody ever want to put this logo on their body? Like, probably not. Would they ever want to put a national sporting organisation logo on their body? Probably not. But how do we get even like 10% of the way there for making somebody feel that connected to the organisation? It's not to do with how cool our logo is, but more about the way that we made them feel.
That's an interesting way to put it, the logos. The only other thing I can think of where someone would have a logo of an entity on their body is the Olympics emblem, right? Like, you see a lot of the Olympians, particularly after their first games, they'll go and get a little tattooed logo on their leg, on their arm. And it's all due to the emotions around it, how that made them feel, because they've got immense pride that they've been able to achieve that in their life. And I'm sure it's no different for those that have got an Ironman emblem as well. So it's almost, how can you replicate that through skate, through any different sporting body? How can you replicate those feelings? They may not necessarily go and get the Skate Australia logo tattooed on them, but how can you replicate those feelings that you would get from an Ironman, from an Olympic Games, at that national level, at the community level even, to engross them to continue to participate and become a loyal fan of that sport?
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like that advocate, and it's like, I know that obviously there's another element to the Ironman, and even more so to the Olympic rings, about the exclusivity part of it, that by having that tattoo on your body, it's a sign that you're part of a very special and very small club. You can't go and get the Olympic rings tattooed if you haven't been there and been an Olympian. But you know, it's still, if you had a terrible experience and somebody treated you really poorly at the Olympics, or you're probably not going to go and get the rings tattooed because you don't really want to remember it, regardless of whether it's the sign of being in a small club. So same with Ironman, that using those two. The other brand that people put on their bodies is Harley Davidson. And again, same sort of thing, like how it makes you feel and the value of the brand in relation to their emotions. And, you know, it is still kind of a small exclusive club that kind of can own a Harley Davidson. I understand, I'm not a motorbike connoisseur, but, you know, it's still so founded in emotion, and the way that brand makes somebody like drive to go and put that tattoo on their body is so visceral. And I think like that's the thing of like, it's not about, I can't ever imagine a world where somebody would want to put their national sporting organisation as a tattoo on their body, but how do we even get a slightly like good positive gut response to being part of the club that is your sport?
And how important do you think the storytelling element of the sport is in telling the stories of those athletes? And I know the one that comes to mind straight away for me when it comes to skate is there was that, I think it was 15-year-old, was it, a few years ago, that debuted at the Olympics? I mean, that's fascinating, and that's inspirational stuff that transcends to the next 15-year-old that wants to come through the ranks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Arissa's story is incredible, and she's a great ambassador for women and young girls in sport, and she holds herself impeccably on all stages that she sort of performs at or speaks in. And so we're very lucky to have someone like her, and actually like particularly in the skateboarding space, because it obviously gets the sort of the media focus on it, that we're really lucky. Like, we've got some incredible people that are part of our stable of athletes that are all incredible ambassadors for young people in particular, but even sort of some of our older athletes are just incredible role models for people engaging in sport in a different way. And so I feel really fortunate to be leading a sport that has incredible athletes that are just great humans as well, that and really doing great things for both kind of humanity and sport. But I think, like, you know, we can get, again, in sport, we can get really stuck into like the storytelling of the elites, and so we should. Like, they're incredible. Like, there's generally pretty amazing stories that sit behind it that are really inspiring, and things that people are really interested in, around, particularly around comebacks or the way that they kind of found the sport and overcame adversity to get there. There's a lot of that, obviously, in sport, and but I think all of those stories exist all the way down to sort of grassroots as well. And I think, like, that's such an important part of our storytelling and our messaging as sport, is to put people in front of people that look like them. You know, yes, I love listening. Like, Winter Olympics is on at the moment, and I was standing in front of the TV this morning crying as Cooper Wilson won the gold in the men's moguls, and like, you know, you can't get better sort of emotive viewing than the Olympics and all the stories that kind of come from that. And I think he's got an incredible story too. But equally, I love hearing the story of Sally, who, you know, never thought that she could run 500 meters, let alone run 5K at the local park run. And now she's just gone under 30 minutes for the very first time. And you know, what that took, and she's got 3 kids, and, you know, she had to work out how to go out and go for a run around her 3 kids and her full-time job, and all of those things, like, are really inspiring as well, and generally allow somebody that's sitting there and thinking, like, you know, watching the Olympics and thinking, like, that is so far removed from my reality, and, you know what, it's easier for me not to engage in sport. If we put those other stories in front of people, and they look at that and they think, well, if they did it, I can, or I can at least get started. You know, that's such a powerful message. And that's how we kind of get people to start to engage even more in sport, is that understanding that, you know, I've never engaged in team sports as an example. And I probably, like, I don't know whether I would, because I don't know whether, like, you know, I see myself in team sports at the moment, but I'm sure that there's people that are like me engaging in team sports. Like, I know there is. So how do I get fed that information as an example, and like, see myself and go, actually, I will go down to the local come and try for netball and get engaged, even though I'm pretty embarrassed because my hand-eye coordination's terrible and I've never played team sports and, like, all of those things. But, you know, maybe that is something where I could get involved and I'd have a great time and I'd meet new people and all of those things that, so if we just kind of keep telling the stories at the top end where they're really exciting and really inspiring, but neglect the stories that exist all the way through, I think we're really missing out.
Yeah, I agree. It's the elites are an inspiration, of course, and we can't take away from what they've achieved and what they've had to go through in their lives to get to where they are today, and we can't discount that. But it's very much inspirational to the young child in the primary school classroom, whose eyes light up when they see an elite sports person. You know, that's their celebrity that they see in their lives, and that's fantastic to get them into the sport initially. But then it's once they start having adversities in their lives, they hit puberty in high school. They've got kids making fun of them for whatever reason. They graduate, then they've got to balance university and working 3 jobs, and now they've got a girlfriend and a boyfriend, and all this other stuff is coming in. And then they become an adult, they become a parent. They've got to balance all of this stuff. And now all of a sudden that elite person that they looked up to all those years ago isn't so much relatable anymore, because they were chasing after their dream as a youngster and now they got to the top. But where's the inspiration of, as you say there, Sally with 3 kids working a job trying to find time to go and run 5K? I mean, where's that inspiration? Yeah. And it's almost, how can we strip all of that back and show, here's the first step for you to take that path. It's put your shoes out the night before, so you wake up in the morning, you can go for your run, that kind of stuff, just to show that there is a pathway for you available.
Yeah. And like some sports, like doing it amazingly, and some activities have got really great ways of storytelling and connecting with people. So I don't want to like diminish the fact that there's some really great examples of that happening out in the sector. And I think there's a lot of things that we're doing really well. And but when I think about storytelling, like I think we do often as a sector, and I keep saying we as if like I have all the answers, but and maybe I'm wrong in comparison to some of our other colleagues, but it's like I think we do gravitate towards those big shiny stories, and I think that's where the media and the money and the focus kind of often goes as well. That you pitch a story to say a large television station, the thing that they often want to pick up is the Olympian story or the elite athlete story. They're not really wanting to pick up the story about Sally. It's too generic. It's too run of the mill. So we do gravitate and we do spend our time trying to kind of get that, again, that market share of voice with the things that we know that people are going to pick up. So it makes sense and it's natural. But, is there things, again, kind of going back to that like franchising model, how do we build out some templates? Because maybe it's not to be driven at national sporting organisation level of telling those grassroots stories, but maybe it is about the club. How do we give them the tools and the things to do to be able to run a really good social media campaign if they're struggling with that, do some targeted advertising, help with the state sporting organisation to do that, because states kind of often are sort of straddling that high performance and participation sphere even more so than what an NSO is. So, is that part of our remit as if you kind of go down the franchise example to knowing that we need to tell more stories of the normal people that kind of live in your local area and be served that kind of content on social media might actually exist down at the club level as opposed to the NSO that should focus on elite. But I think that's kind of some of the things that we probably don't get very clear on as organisations while we're really in the weeds and really stuck in the day-to-day, but might make a significant improvement to sort of the Australian population, as well as not losing the great stories that exist for our Olympians and our elite athletes.
Yeah, I fully agree from that perspective there. And as we look ahead the next few years, there's this little object dangling in a year called 2032. Not far from you in Brisbane there.
No.
Skate will be a big part of that, of course. And we've got, what's it now? It's still 6 years away.
6 years. But, just over 6 years.
Yeah. You've got that marked by the day, don't you, in your calendar?
Yeah, pretty much.
How do you see the next 6 years falling out? What opportunities are on the horizon for specifically for skate? We'll talk about in this context.
For skateboarding,
and
you
how
mean?
do you see? Yeah, skateboarding.
Yeah.
And then how do you see that align with the participation opportunities that are available over the next few years, and really engrossing everyone into the skate ahead of the Olympics?
Yeah, we've got a lot of work to do is probably the smallest answer to that. Is skateboarding's an interesting, that actually all skate sports, or like roller sports, are sort of fall into this bracket to some degree, but particularly skateboarding and scootering, which is coming up behind it, is like they're heavily recreational activities at the moment. They don't really exist in a structured sporting organisation realm, and so it's kind of made this big debut into the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, been in Paris and was great, named again for LA, and no sport is confirmed for 2032 at the moment, but we obviously definitely hope that we're on the initial sports program like we are in LA. But it's, I think we've got a lot of work to do around how we connect with the kid at the skate park or their parent at the skate park. And, I don't want to get in the way of again, going back to experience, I don't want to get in the way of their experience, which is unstructured and fun and play, and just come in and tell them they've got to kind of sign up for a membership, join a club and go to this competition. And like, we want to do sport differently. And, I don't necessarily know what that looks like right this second, but I know that our North Star is to ensure that we don't just kind of put a sport box on and make everybody adapt to us. It's about understanding and listening to our community around what are the things that they need from us to be able to grow, what are the things that they need from us to be able to be successful, what would they like to see, and are those things that we can facilitate, as opposed to coming in and kind of being like, all right, well, we're going to establish a club here and then put on a competition here, and that becomes the state championships. Like, we have to do some of those things. We're putting on our very first, in this iteration of the organisation, very first national championships on the Gold Coast in July, and that's really exciting. Like, that's a really big step for the skateboarding high performance program in particular, because it allows us to see our best of Australian talent all in the one place, all against each other, and vying to be the national champion, which has sort of roll-on effects to selection when we get closer to LA, etc. So, that's a really exciting step forward. And yes, is a traditional sport sort of structure of having a national champs, but that is because we have things like world champs and the Olympics that we have to have a pathway for. But I think the further we go down towards that participation and grassroots level, I'm really cognizant of not just doing the things that we've always done in sport, and really trying to listen and understand where those gaps are, and how do we help facilitate, how do we help enable. There's things that we can just do better to help facilitate better interactions with skateboarding, just around, people seeing themselves in our organisation. And so that's on the agenda as well. But I think a big part of it is about really understanding where our community want us, and not getting in the way of the magic that they've already built before we got here. I don't have all the answers. I'm not the Messiah. So I don't want to do that. I just want to listen and learn, and then provide what they tell me they need within the constraints of the things that I can do.
Fantastic, Alex. It's going to be a really, really exciting period the next 6 years as we build into Brisbane, but particularly over the course of the next 2 years going into LA. One final question for you before we wrap up this morning. Thank you again for your time. It's been absolutely fantastic. I finish every episode with the same question. So I'd like you to please finish this sentence. A modern brand succeeds when it is willing to what?
Provide a great experience.
Provide a great experience. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier around improving that customer experience, whether it be an event, a product, service, whatever that may be.
Yeah, again, it's just about how, whatever brand we're talking about, how that makes you feel. That gets people coming back. It gets people talking about it. It gets people engaged. All of those things, we know that it's all about how something makes you feel, and the best brands out there are making you feel something very, very positive, and that's why they're successful.
Brilliant, Alex. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful having a chat, learning a bit more around your career trajectory from London through to Skate Australia now, and everything in between. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. I'll get you out at a karaoke bar and one night, and I'll show you the old skills of musical theatre background.
That sounds like a plan. Thank you, Alex.